Voices from the road. Two truckers, one road, endless mysteries.
Hi, I'd like to welcome you all to the first episode in the series of Voices from the Road that is covering the Renee Freer murder. Tonight's episode is going to discuss the disappearance and the murder of a child. While there won't be any graphic details, the conversation does include themes of violence, loss, and childhood trauma. So please take care while listening. If the subject matter is difficult for you, consider pausing or skipping ahead from this episode. Or listen when you feel more supported. This episode was created with deep respect for Renee and all those whose lives were forever changed. So, we're going to start off letting you know that we're doing this and revisiting this because the case was closed recently, October of 2025, after 48 years of being led down a road that we thought we were going to have justice served. And we weren't. So we are fighting for justice in a different genre, possibly changing a law. And we'll get more into that so that this never has to happen to another family. Because 48 years is a long time. And then to think you're finally going to get there, only to have the door slammed in your face. It's horrible. It doesn't feel like anything was done. So we are doing this because we need support and we need people to know Renee's story. So we have to tell it again. And a lot of people know it, but it's time to talk. The case is closed now, so talking about it prior to this, you had to watch what you said. Now we can all talk. We can talk and scream from the top of our lungs. We need to talk so much about it that it gets picked up nationally by an investigative television show, that it gets talked about by everyone everywhere, that Renee's story gets told, so that not only can we change a law, but so that a murderer doesn't continue to live his life comfortably like he has for 48 years, that as he continues to live free the rest of his life, maybe he can be a little bit uncomfortable, so that maybe there's just a tiny bit of justice served. You know, maybe he goes to bed saying, damn, everybody knows what I did, but I'm still free. Or he goes into the local Stop and Shop and everyone goes, that's him. That might be a little bit of justice. Who knows? We'll see what we can do. Anyway, in 1977 in Monroe, it was kind of a town where kids rode their bikes until the streetlights came on, very much like a lot of towns in the United States, probably your own town. Neighbors knew one another, doors were left unlocked. Childhood felt safe back then, until one night changed everything. Tonight's episode is about Renee Freer. She was 8 years old. She was a best friend. She had a family. She had a future. What happened to Renee didn't just take her life. It altered the childhoods of those who loved her and the community that searched for her. You'll hear from two voices tonight who knew Renee. Renee was not a headline, but a child. You're going to hear from Tawny, who was her best friend, and Cindy, who lived 4 houses away and helped search for her the night she went missing. This is not a story only about crime. It's a story about innocence lost in the moment when childhood ends. This is the story of who Renee was and how one night changed everything.
This video clip is of Williams Drive. I want you to get a sense of the place, the feeling of it. Later in the video, you will see a picture of Renee's home, a home that later fell into disrepair after her family moved away. It stood as a quiet reminder of what was lost. Back in 1977, Williams Drive in the Stepney section of Monroe, Connecticut was a small, quiet, dead-end street. Just 20 or so modest ranch homes surrounded by acres of woods. Monroe was a small town, and on this street, everyone knew everyone. The neighborhood was filled with children, preschoolers through high school, moving together like one big extended family, riding bikes until dark, playing kickball in the road, shooting hoops in the driveways, calling out for one more round of kick the can before dusk settled in and we were called home, and lots of laughter. Behind the homes were woods, dense, deep, and familiar. Paths were worn down by the feet of the neighborhood kids, leading to handmade forts and horse farms beyond. Those woods didn't feel frightening. They felt like an extension of our yards, an extension of home. Parents worked outside in their yards, glancing up now and then, always watching out for another's child. It felt safe. On June 22nd, 1977, Renee Freer was playing outside just like any other summer day, but she never came home. That night at 10:15 p.m., Renee was found in those very woods we all knew so well, the woods that had once felt like part of our own backyards. She had been brutally taken from her family just a few hundred feet from her home. It was the night that changed everything for her parents, for her family, for her friends, for this small, close-knit community. And decades later, her killer has never been brought to justice. In today's podcast, I'll be speaking with 2 of Renee's childhood friends and neighbors who still carry the memory of that summer night. I hope you'll stay and listen.
Okay, so here we are. And like I said tonight, we have Renee's best friend and neighbor, and they're going to introduce themselves, Tawny and Cindy, so you'll know who they are. So,
Hi,
Tawny?
I'm Tawny.
And I'm Cindy.
Okay, so we're going to start tonight. I'm going to ask both of you to just explain to everybody what it was like growing up at that time in Monroe, in the neighborhood, because Tawny lived in the neighborhood as well. And Tawny went to school with Renee, and Cindy was just a little bit older. So why don't you guys tell us what Renee was like going to school and in the neighborhood, and what the day-to-day was like with Renee, so we can get a picture of how your relationships were.
Okay.
Tawny, you want to go first?
Yep. So I lived right down the road on Hattertown, which was the street that Williams Drive was off of. I met Renee in kindergarten, and we became close friends immediately. We were in class together, so we rode the bus every day to and from. We sat together in school. We had lunch together. We played on the playground. She was just the funniest girl ever. She made you laugh. She was friendly. She was just fun. She was a jokester. She was a tomboy. She was just fun. Our day to day would be go to class, lunch. She would always be making a mess of my lunch trays because that's just the kind of girl she was. And recess was always chasing the boys on the playground, and then you know, back home on the bus every day, and then you know, wait till the next day. I mean, she was fun, always everybody's friend.
Oh,
Great.
Yeah.
Cindy.
So, I lived 4 houses down the road from Renee, and we lived on a little small dead-end street off of Hattertown. So it was walking distance to Tawny's house, but Hattertown tended to be a little bit busier of a road, and we were a dead-end street. So really, the only cars that would be on our street were either somebody coming to visit or people that lived there. And at the time, there was probably maybe 20 houses or so, and a lot of kids on our street. But we ranged in age from 4 years old to high school age, maybe even older than high school, and everybody just kind of knew everybody. Parents knew what kids, and we were outdoors all the time, and we could talk a little bit more about that. But right now, you know, if in terms of Renee, she was 4 years younger than me. I was 13 at the time of the murder, but you know, I knew her earlier than that as well when she first moved to the street. But as Tawny said, I mean, she just was this effervescent, bubbly,
Bubbly.
friendly little girl. And she was the kind of girl that, you know, like sometimes, you know, an 8-year-old, a 7-year-old, 6-year-old might feel uncomfortable talking to the older kids, but not Renee.
Renee.
Renee was not nervous to talk to anybody. Wasn't nervous to talk to adults. Wasn't nervous to talk to little ones. Wasn't nervous to talk to the teenagers. And friendly. I mean, friendly and boisterous, and would tell you her opinion. And so everybody knew her. Very giggly.
Do either of you
Great laugh.
do either of you have like the memory of the last time you saw her?
I don't.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was the last time I saw her. I know Tawny. Go ahead, you share your story.
Um,
That was hard.
I remember the last day on the school bus. We were specifically talking about the bus streamers because anybody who rode the buses in Monroe on the last day of school remembers the streamers that we would
That's
hang out
right. I
of the
forgot about
windows.
that. Oh my
And-
gosh.
Yep, you would beg your parents to take you to the store to get those
Oh
rolls
my
of streamers.
goodness.
Yep.
That's so funny.
So
Oh,
I remember
boy.
the streamers, and you would hold them out the bus windows if your bus driver would let you, and you would pray that you didn't drop the whole streamer out the window.
That's great.
Oh my! I haven't thought about that memory probably since I did
I
it.
know. Me too.
Yep.
Holy smokes!
The bus streamers. So
Jeez.
I remember
Boy.
getting off the bus, and we always sat on, well, we tried to always sit on the right side of the bus because that would be when I would get off the bus, she could wave. So we could wave to each other
Wow.
through the window.
you
And I
said-
remember
did you sit
handing
in
her
the
my
front of the
streamers.
bus?
We had to sit, yeah, the certain age group, you had to sit like in certain sections of the bus. The bigger kids sat way in the back, and then kindergarten, and then so on and so on. But I remember handing her my streamer as I
Right.
got off the bus, and so that was my
Wow.
last memory. And then turn and wave, and all the
Jeez.
streamers
Now-
waving.
Yeah.
Now, what was going on the night that she went missing? Were you both doing that night? Do you remember?
So Williamsburg, I mean, there were always kids in the street. We were always, whether we were in the street in somebody's yard, there were bikes all over. A big game we used to play is either kick the can or run the bases. And it generally was in front of my house, or if you went up, which was down at the bottom of the hill, or if you went up to the top of the hill, which was in front of Renee's house. A lot of times we would play kickball up there, that sort of thing. That night was particularly quiet in the neighborhood. There were Little League games, there was Chalk Hill graduation. I'm not sure if there was I think for some reason I feel like there was a
Chalk Hill was the middle school.
That's the middle
Yep.
school. Mm-hmm. And we did have a lot of 8th graders on our street that would have been graduating. So
Okay.
so people were at the graduation that evening, early evening. I actually was at the graduation too, even though I was in 7th grade. I was passing out programs for the graduation, so I was there helping. My brother was at a Little League game. So there were a lot of people that weren't in the neighborhood. So early, like right after dinner
Right.
time. So it was quiet, quieter than normal. Normally we'd all be outside, after dinner.
Right.
So that was kind of the beginning part of it. And I would say I got home probably like 7:30ish, I would imagine, around there.
So when did you guys realize something was off? Because Tawny, your dad was a firefighter, right? Okay.
For me, it was about 7:30, 8 o'clock, because that was our bedtime. We would always have to go upstairs at about that time. And I remember her mom driving down the road, and she was going very slow. And because my dad was a fireman, we had the police scanners in our house. And I remember them calling all the firemen out for a search party.
So she
And
had
then-
the window
Okay.
open and she was calling for Renee in front of yours.
She was calling.
In front of your
Yep.
house.
And my mom knew Renee's mom. They went to high school together. So, I mean, being upstairs, I hear everything. I know something's going on. I mean, I didn't know at that point that something bad had happened. I didn't know until the next morning. But I knew my dad had left. I knew something bad was going on because the fire trucks and the police cars and everything had to go right by my house to get to Williams Drive. And
Now,
go ahead. I mean,
Well,
across
for-
the street there's an access point to some of the trails that are across the woods that back up to Williams Drive, and that's where some of the search parties went in.
now, Cindy, your experience was completely different because you were on the street, and
So we were outdoors. We were in. I had actually my cousins were over, and my brother had gotten back from the baseball game. My aunt and uncle over. My parents, and they were sitting on the patio in the back, and we were all out in our yard. I remember being in the yard, and I remember Felicia, Renee's mom, driving slowly down the hill. And yelling Renee's name, and she stopped when she saw a gang of kids in my yard and called us. So, have you guys seen Renee? And I remember running out like through my driveway up to the car window. Her car window was down, and she was heading down the street toward Hattertown at that point. And she said, have you seen Renee? And at that point, it's hard to say, but it was dusk. So I'm thinking it was most likely around 8 p.m. at that point. I can't recall if my brother was back from the baseball game. I think he got back a little bit later than that. But it was, and I said, and we all said, there was a gang of us at the car, we'll look for her. We'll look for her for you, Well, if you see her, bring her home or send her home. But she wasn't, she wasn't hysterical. Like, she was concerned, but like, I think today's day and age, I think if my 8-year-old were missing, I think I would be distraught. But I think it was a different time.
It was.
I don't think, like, she just assumed she was with another kid on the street. Is the feeling I got. Like, send her home. It's getting dark.
Yeah.
It's getting late, kind of thing. We thought that she may have been in the woods. Maybe she got injured. Maybe she fell and she couldn't get up. So we went up then behind my house up into the woods to start looking for her. And that was, it was 8 o'clock.
And it was still light out, right?
Still light out.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Because I don't think sunset, like I looked it up at one point. I think it was like at 8:25 in June.
Right. I
So
think
it
the
was
longest day of the year is
yeah.
around then, isn't
So
it?
at that
Yeah.
point, it was still light, but it was dusk. Like the sun was going down, certainly, and
Right.
but we weren't afraid to go looking for her in the woods. The woods were, that was our backyard. I mean,
Yeah.
it was not anything.
Right.
We were not thinking anything.
We weren't
bad.
afraid of bugs or
You
anything
know,
then. Yeah.
we just assumed she had gotten hurt or lost, or, and we started to look for her, kind of in a group, not by ourselves, but in a group. Adults, parents started going into the tree, up into the woods. People were walking up and down the street, not knocking on doors to see if she was there. And as it got darker, it got more and more concerning, obviously. And then it was dark then, and I remember it must have been after 9 p.m. I'm thinking, and our parents said, no more woods. Everybody stay in the yards. This is serious now, and
At some point, the police
that's when the
show
police
up.
started to come. And I think we were at that point. Like, I remember feeling excited. Yes, people are here to help find her. They're going to get her now, is how I remember feeling that way. And I remember there being not just police cars, like it just felt
Like
there
help
was
is on the way.
so
Yeah.
many cars coming up. And volunteers, like I want to say, like the volunteers had blue lights in their cars. And I don't know if I've made that part up in my head, but I absolutely remember volunteers coming
Well,
up.
they
and knowing
said
they
that
were
there was a
volunteers.
training going on the other side of town, and they called all the firefighters, I thought, like over. And those were because Monroe is a volunteer town.
Yeah.
And they said, get over there, there's a child missing. And they sent them over with their blue lights in their car
Right.
to help.
And then
So
at that point,
that's
everybody obviously
probably a
went up
valid memory.
to the top of the street where Renee's house was. And
Now,
so,
when you say top in a dead end, is that the dead end part of the
no,
street,
the
or
dead end
the?
is even further. So
Okay.
I mean, it's all walking distance. It's
Yeah.
you ride your bike and whatnot. But there was
Because I grew up on a dead end too, so the top of the street was the open end of the street, and the end of the street was the dead end part of the street.
Gotcha. So I was at the bottom part of the street where it started the incline, like maybe a house or two past mine, and then it was a pretty
Right.
steep incline. You wouldn't
Yeah.
want to ride your bike up it. It was that
Right.
steep. Coming down was
Yeah.
fun, but it was. And Renee
Yeah.
was just at the top of the street. So
Okay.
it almost was like two different worlds in a way. If you were at the bottom of the street, you really couldn't see the top of the street.
Yeah, our dead end was the same way. Now that you mention
Yeah,
it,
and if you kept going past Renee's house, there was probably, I'm just guessing on Renee's side right now, I mean, probably 5 or 6 houses more. To the
Right.
end. And across the
that's
street,
funny.
it was, Renee's house, and then there were 2 more houses, and then it was all woods. Now that's all houses, and there was
all
another
houses.
road that
Right.
was cut in. That's all houses, but that didn't start until the 80s. When at
Right.
77, that was all woods on that side. So, and Renee's side of the street too. And the road just went straight down, and it wasn't even a cul-de-sac, a circle. It just kind of ended. Just, and then there was woods, and if you went through those woods, it would bring you down a steep incline, and you were already in Easton, because it's right on
Easton.
the Easton line. So if you went that way, you were in Easton. If you went this way a half a mile, you were in Newtown. It was like a triangle almost, if that makes sense.
So at some point, Cindy, you and your family, you realized she was murdered,
Yeah.
or she was dead
Well, I remember
that night.
I remember I lived right next door to Steve Biley. He was a police officer at the time, and he was on duty that evening. And I remember him coming to our house, and we were still outside. My mom was sitting on the front porch. My parents were both outside, and the kids were in the yard. And he said to my parents, keep the kids in the yard. This is not good. But we didn't know what that meant. And we were outside when she was found, because, and I remember this, and I've confirmed this with other people that were with me, because there was almost, you could, as you looked up the street, which we didn't have street lights, so everything was always pitch black. But that night it was like glowing at the top of the street because there were so many police cars and flashlights and firefighters, and so there was almost like a glow coming from the top of the street, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And you could hear the commotion because cars were going up the street, up the street, up the street. And I remember it was almost a cheer. It was a cheer, like, yes, kind of thing, that went up. And we thought, oh my gosh, they found her.
Yeah.
And then I can't recall, and because I don't want to misspeak here, but if the ambulance went up after that or if it was up before that. But then the ambulance wasn't coming down, and it wasn't coming down, and it wasn't coming down. And that's when we knew something was really bad. Still didn't know it was murder. We knew that she was bad because, yeah.
And where was her mother at that point? Was she up there?
She was. She had
Yeah.
been looking as well. And there's another neighbor, couple of neighbors that were our age, 7th grade, 8th grade, and they were there when Renee was found in the woods.
Uh-huh.
I recall Felicia screaming and trying to get to her child, and
Of
people
course.
holding her back.
Oh,
It's horrible.
yeah. And now, Tawny, you were young. You were Renee's age, so your mother probably put you to bed.
Yep.
That night. So the next morning you had to get up and go to school.
Yep.
But did they have to tell you before you went to school?
7:30 in
They
the morning.
couldn't send you off to school. And how do parents tell their little girl? I mean, that had to be so hard for how do your parents navigate that?
My dad took me to the fancy living room. I remember that. And sat me down on the couch and told me that Renee was murdered that night. That
And did you even understand what that meant?
I know.
You
I think just because with my dad being a fireman, and I just knew. I knew what it meant, and that he told me that she was dead and that she was murdered, and I cried and got on the school bus and cried on the bus. And I wasn't in the same grade as her at that point because they had kept me back a year. And I was in the classroom next to Mrs. Sampley's and was crying, and nobody could figure out why. And Mrs. Sampley knew, and she brought me into her classroom, and I sat down with a couple other little girls, and we just cried. And that's it. We just cried for the rest of the day. That was the last day of school. Yeah, it was horrible. And then that was it. I mean, it was the last day of school. You didn't see your friends again, and you didn't go outside, and you were scared.
Yeah. Wow. My house is filled with clocks. And what an ironic time
Right?
To say that, right?
to say that.
Wow.
Yeah.
You timed that.
Yeah, I didn't time it. I think it's timed by Renee. What is this song? But anyway,
Wow.
this clock has a mind of its own. So anyway, little song from heaven.
Right?
I know.
Yes. Throughout my podcast, we're always going to get that. So anyway, so
We had, I don't I think we did know either that night or the next night, or the next day. And maybe my parents knew, but it was already so late, you know, it was already 10:15, I believe, when she was found. So, but we were all up. I mean, obviously it was so stressful that night. It was awful.
Were you out of school already?
No, I believe we had
The middle school?
No, we had the same. It was the same schedule.
Yeah.
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 So, but it
So now,
did change everything.
yeah.
Obviously, you know, changed everything in our, you know, little community.
Now the neighborhood was crawling with police for how long afterwards? Weeks?
A long time.
Yeah, every bit of weeks, yeah, for sure. They, you know, questioned all of us, questioned everybody's parents. They would, I remember them being like at the end of the street in a police car, and anybody coming into the neighborhood or leaving the neighborhood, they would stop and question. I remember them coming to our door and questioning us, talking to us, you know, where were we that night, what had happened, what we had seen, that sort of thing. But they, you know, we did know that she had been murdered. And I remember them telling us how as well, or at least my parents told us.
My parents,
How she was injured. You know, maybe they depended on who, you know, developmentally where their child was and what they decided to tell, but we did indeed know that.
She was
Do
bludgeoned.
you think it affected the way you carried yourself through your life?
Oh, yeah.
I do. I definitely do. I think, you know, it was the end of innocence that I always think of it as that way, you know. I mean, kids are resilient, thankfully, and our parents did their best to protect us from that, from such a horrific thing. But to think that such a horrific crime.
I mean, there's a small percentage of people in their life who know someone who got murdered.
Yeah.
I'd like to think. I mean,
that's true, you know, and Monroe, you know, it felt as though a safe little place to raise your child or your children, and again, we all knew each other, we all took care of each other, we all watched out for one another. You know, Renee was the kind of girl, and my mom always tells a story. In fact, my mom's 87 and still remembers this story of Renee bopping down the street, and we had roses along our fence line, and rather than just grabbing one of the roses for Mrs. Sampley, she came up to the door and knocked on the door and asked my mom if she could pick flowers for her teacher, you know. And of course my mom said yes, but like she was just, you know, that kind of a little, you know, she was a sweet child. But we didn't, you know, not that Renee's mom didn't watch her, she did. But, you know, it was different back then, you know. I mean, I think now, looking at it through the eyes of an adult, I've said to my mom, why didn't we move? Like, I think I might have picked up and moved. Like, what, are you kidding me? Yeah, a lot of people did. My
A lot of people
parents
moved.
did not. And I think...
and why did they not? What was your mother's answer to that?
Oh, no, and my mother's afraid of her own shadow, so it really it made surprising, you know, but she had tight reins on us. Like, my mom was the mom that was in her, you know, bathrobe, peeking out at the bus stop to make sure that we were behaving down the end of the bus stop or that everything was good. So she did, even back then, she had tight reins on us. She knew where we were at most times. But, you know, we just, that's not to say we didn't have a lot of freedom.
Do you remember people looking at each other differently around the neighborhood?
Not looking at other kids differently. I don't remember that. I remember one time, and it was maybe a month after, there was a man, young man. I mean, I don't know now because I was looking at it as a 13-year-old, but I remember him walking up the street, and we were out in the yards. And that whole summer, like we were not venturing off anywhere. We were in groups, we were in our yards, we were not in the woods, we were, so in terms of that, it changed all. I don't think I ever went back into the woods after, I don't think any of us did really. That all changed. But if we were outside, we were all together someplace, you know. And there was a man who was walking up the street. So whether he was just taking a walk, whether he was curious as to where Renee lived because of all the news coverage, but he didn't belong there. There was no reason for him to be there. And the police were called, and they came and they questioned him, and I think it was legitimate that the guy was probably taking a walk, but things like that. People were really
Right.
watching.
Yeah.
They were watching. There was a murderer loose. I mean,
Yeah.
and nobody knew who did it at that point. You know,
Right. So when you hear Renee's name, what do you want people to picture now? Like, what is it that you want them to associate with Renee?
That her life was stolen.
What do you hope to come out of? Right. If it wasn't, what do you think Renee would have turned out? What do you wish for her if she could have?
Well, she would definitely done something with animals. There's no doubt.
I was just going to say,
I
I
think-
almost think you and her would have both remained friends, and
oh yeah,
Well,
I don't know.
yes.
I see a lot of. I
Considering,
almost think you carried out a lot of her legacy.
yeah, except I don't have horses, I have goats, but yeah.
Yeah.
she
Yeah.
loved animals. That's true.
Yeah. Yeah, she loved horses. Yeah, I remember that horse down the road that used to stand on the side of the road. Yeah. Yeah, she did love animals.
You know, what I would like people to realize is, I mean, we're coming up on 49 years. I mean, that's just so hard to even comprehend. It feels like a lifetime ago, and yet when we talk about it, it feels
Yesterday.
like I could picture it like yesterday. That night, I could
Yesterday.
picture it so clearly. And that, especially if you went through it like we did, Donnie and I, and other people that were involved, like we never let go of that. Like that was
I
something
feel-
we always had, where people maybe on the other side of Monroe, you know, there's been so many stories that they didn't even know about this. Like,
Nope.
which,
I feel like you guys almost never got a chance to properly grieve, and now slam this case shut, and now it's time. Now you're almost like you're having to grieve.
yeah.
Now you're having to feel sad because now it's over and there's nothing you can do. And now it's like, oh my gosh.
Well, you know, it
I mean, how do you feel about what happened? What are your
was so.
It's still not
nobody
over.
No, exactly. It just.
It's not over.
I feel like
It just
we got
paused.
the rug pulled out from underneath us. You know.
Yeah.
I think
Okay.
that we were. Obviously, if you were close to the case, it's not something that ever was far from your mind. It was something, you know. I mean, I lived in Monroe. I lived there, you know, till I got married. I mean,
Right.
So I was there a long time in that home.
Okay, so tell us what's next then.
And so I think.
What are we going to do?
Well, the whole thing with the book was so exciting that somebody was finally bringing attention to it, that there was being more newspaper articles written, that there was talk about it, that there was a $50,000 reward from Governor Rowland, which I didn't even know. I had no idea. I just thought people just kind of shelved her case, you know, and but it was always open all these years. I just assumed that it was a cold case, that they could never get to the end. That there was always talk
Or
that
closed.
we know,
Or
who did
solved.
it, or you know, or exactly that people always had their suspicions of how this
Right.
happened and who did this, but there was never enough evidence to ever prove that. And I felt like in this last 2 years, with all the people that became involved, and the Facebook groups, and the vigil, and the police officers talking more about it, I thought for the first time in all these years, we're getting close. Like, Like it was
really
the first
close.
time. Like we never lost hope, but
No,
I really felt like, oh my gosh, this is going to happen. Finally,
really gonna happen.
some justice. There's going to be, not that you could bring Renee back, and
Nope.
her poor mother, died without knowing ever what happened to her little girl. But then to find out we know who did it, we can prove who did it, according to the police. But because of statute of limitations and the age of the suspect at the time, there's nothing we could do. There's no legal mechanism to charge this person.
So, are any steps being taken for this situation?
Tony, I don't want to keep talking. Go ahead if you have something to say, and then I'll
Well-
jump in about the law after if you'd like.
So,
No, you said it. I'm good. Just that the rug was pulled out from under us, and there's never closure now. I mean, we lost our hope for closure.
Yeah, there was such it was a sucker punch. I mean, we're like, what? Like, and to find out the way that we found out, like everybody else, like the newspaper article that came out.
so,
Yeah.
I mean, it was such a blow.
but all hope is not lost because there's things we can do that will give you, all right, for Tawny, what will give you a sense of closure in some aspects? What's your hopes and dream for maybe making this feel some type of justice? What can we do? What can we ask the public to help us with?
To make sure that Renee's name is never forgotten, that her case is never forgotten, that the injustices that happened to her never happen again. Family and friend never suffer the way we suffered. Suspects
Okay.
never get
So
away
we'll-
with what they did.
Get away with murder, yeah. So
Get
this
away
is
with
like
murder.
I mean, I don't know if I can ever. I am a true crime junkie. I mean, me and my husband drive a tractor trailer for 20 years. We've spent countless hours listening to every crime story. I have yet to listen to a Dateline or a Nancy Grace or a crime junkie episode where the murderer is known and got away with murder and walks amongst the public freely, let alone a child murderer. Child murderers usually end up being murdered by another murderer or somebody. So like this is like an iconic story. So yes, for Tawny, I think anybody who's watching, we need to start screaming loud to all national investigative television shows to cover the Renee Freer murder story and get this on every
Channel,
television show we can. Unsolved mysteries. Let's get Renee's story told and out there so that every crime junkie for the next 50 years, because that's how long it took for this story to wrap up. So for the next 50, everybody gets to hear it and remember and know her name and see her face and remember Renee. And Cindy, what do you think that we can get done to get Renee's name?
As unfortunately, you can't do things retroactively with the law. You can't say, let's put a new law in place and now we can prosecute this person. However, we've come up with a proposal, a bill for the legislative Connecticut General Assembly, and it's very forward-looking and it's very specific because there aren't probably a lot of cases like this, but there are some, and there are people that fall through the cracks. So in this case, if indeed it was a person that was under 14 than when he committed this crime, and that is what the police believe, and that's what the arrest warrant was for.
Okay.
What happened was, because he was under 14, they could not charge him with murder. He could not, in the state of Connecticut, you cannot, even though the statute of limitations for murder, there is no statute of limitations for murder, but if you are 14, you're in the juvenile system. And so at the time, so there was nothing they could do. They couldn't charge him with murder. But they could have charged him with manslaughter in the first degree. And if that were that would be great. However, especially with new forensics and DNA, which we didn't have back in the 70s, there's something that's proven that way. There was only a 5-year statute of limitations. So if this happened in 77, by 1982, he walked free. If it was indeed somebody under the age of 14. So what we are trying to do now is we've been working with senators and representatives, and there has been a lot of attention, and they are listening, and part of it, and where the trend is going, is that something that happens when you're 13 years old, developmentally, your brain is not developed till you're 25, 26 years old. So they're saying, well, something that you may have done as a 13, 14, 15-year-old, does it ruin now your whole life? My feeling is this child's whole life, her family, her close friends, it was ruined. This wasn't, I got angry at someone and I pushed her down and she hit her head and she died. This was,
well, can I say something?
Sure.
I don't want my 18-year-old daughter dating a boy that at 14 murdered somebody, and now he's 18 and he's and they believe that he didn't know what he was doing at 14, and he's 18 and he's out in the general public. Yeah, no.
I'm just saying that, but
these things have
the
to be
trend,
handled
and
different. Yeah,
that's
the trend now.
So,
that's what's allowed now.
What we are saying is let's talk about this. Let's not take away the constitutional rights of a juvenile, okay? But let's look at each case specifically. So as I said, that this isn't somebody that just fell because another kid pushed her or they got into a fight.
Yeah.
This was a deliberate act. This child's face was crushed. Her skull was crushed. This was deliberate.
So it was violent. Yeah.
And so in a case like this, because of a birth date, there's no mechanism.
Yes.
So
the law should be case by
and
case.
it's not vengeance. It's not, but it's about fairness, and it's about accountability. Yeah. And
so maybe I could have you come back and do a podcast for us in layman's terms, and explain to us what Renee's law entails in layman's terms for those of us, and explain to us what we're going to be fighting for.
Absolutely.
And explain to us how it pertains to Renee's case and future cases, and break it down simply for those of us, so that we can march to Hartford behind you and support that. And the rest of us,
it's a legacy for us. So this hurt and this passion that we have for it, we can direct it in a positive way in her name, so that it helps another child, another family, that another family never has to hear the words that Renee's family did. And with Renee's mom gone, we need to be her voice. And I just
we say, like, Renee is forever 8.
Yes.
But Cindy and Tawny were forced to grow up fast.
Real fast.
Considering what you went through in that neighborhood on that day in Monroe in 1977.
And not just us.
And you've carried it with you. Many of the kids in Monroe and who knew and loved Renee and how to deal with that and live with that and what happened. And the story lives in your memories. And I think that we can all stand behind you. and we can do a podcast explaining the law for those of us so we can march behind you. We can continue to do podcasts and dissect this story, and we can tell all our stories about how it affected us, and anyone who wants to come forward from Monroe and tell how it affected them and their part in it. And there's been so many false accusations and things that finger pointing and rabbit holes and corruption and things that weren't done and have been done in this case. And for it to fall apart the way it did and slammed shut, murderers free. So, case is closed now. We can talk. So we may as well start telling our stories, because that's how it's going to get picked up by a Dateline and an Unsolved Mysteries, because there's a lot to tell. There's a lot of things that went on with this case for it not to be solved, after 48 years. So we all need to start talking and then let the story be told nationally. And let's get these two girls, all of us who are watching, and let's all take this to the top. We'll pass the law. We'll get Renee's story known nationally. And I'm here for the ride. So I want to thank you both for being here tonight.
Share with your listeners our website and all of that, and about the petition as well. If you could do that, that'd be helpful.
We can. That's what I was just going to have you do. But we do have a petition, and it is on change.org. And we would like you all to go sign it. The more signatures that we get, and I believe last time we checked, has anyone checked? It was almost 700, or
close to 700.
We need to get over 1,000 and keep going, and then get 10,000, and then get 1 million. I always shoot for the stars. But go on change.org. Renee Freer. It's Renee with 2 E's, Freer.
Yeah. Maybe we could even post it so that they can see.
Yeah. And then we have a website. It's justiceforrenee.com. We have a Facebook page, Justice for Renee. I mean, pretty much it's Justice for Renee.
Renee Freer.
I mean, it's you just put Justice for Renee Freer, but if you put Justice, well, actually.
No, our website is the number 4. Right?
Oh, yes, Justice for Renee. Thank you.
You can do something, and you could post it at the end of your podcast.
Well, put it this way. If you put in Justice for Renee, look for the cute little girl with the pigtails. Anyone else is an imposter. Because someone else might pop up, and it's not her. It's the cute little girl with the pigtails.
She is cute.
She's adorable. But join our Facebook page, join our Instagram. Instagram has the best soundtrack you're ever going to want to hear. If you like the 70s, that's you're going to get some great stories always coming across. We need signatures, we need members. We need to keep it growing, because the more you share it, the more people that join, the bigger the numbers, the more people will get to get involved. And that's how we're going to get national recognition. And that's how we're going to get the law passed and the national investigative television shows. And that's how we're going to get the justice that Renee deserves. So thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
We think you did a wonderful job starting our stories. Oh, sorry. Did that hurt your ears? It hurt mine.
It's okay.
Oh, I banged the table.
Oh,
no. So I think this is a good first start to the series on Renee's murder. And everybody have a wonderful evening. And we have a wonderful video to take us out. And I will see you on our next episode. Have a good night. Thank you.
Thank you.
the smiles returning to their faces. Little darling, it seems like years since it's been here. Here comes the sun, here comes the sun, and I say it's alright. Sun, here he comes. Sun, 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 here he comes. Sun, 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 here he comes. Sun, 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 here he comes. Little darling, the smiles returning to their faces. Little darling, it seems like years since it's been here. Here comes the sun, here comes the sun, and I say it's alright. Sun, here he comes. Sun, 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 here he comes. Sun, 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 here he comes. Sun, 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 here he comes. Little darling, the smiles returning to their faces. Little darling, it seems like years since it's been here. Here comes the sun, here comes the sun, and I say it's alright. Sun, here he comes. Sun, 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 here he comes. Sun, 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 here he comes. Sun, 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 here he comes. Little darling, the smiles returning to their faces. Little darling, it seems like years since it's been here. Here comes the sun, here comes the sun, and I say it's alright.